All right. Hello and welcome everyone to today's Building a Cybersecure Practice Strategies for Staying Protected webinar. My name is Jacob Borkover here on the webinar team at Rectangle Health, and just want to thank everyone for taking time out of their day to be here with us today. So before we jump into things, got a long list of housekeeping here to get through, and then we'll get into our presentation. So this is a 1 hour, 1 CE credit course. We are PACE accredited to provide CE through the Academy of General Dentistry. So you will be receiving your CE credits via email within 2 weeks from today's date. So be on the lookout for that. It'll come from Nora Dowling on our CE team, and just be checking your inbox. And if you don't have it in 2 weeks, check your spam or junk folder. And if not, reach out to us and we'll make sure to get you taken care of. If you are joining on a mobile device today, that's okay. But if you can get to a desktop, we do recommend that for a better viewing experience, and also it'll be easier to answer the polling questions there as well. At the end of the webinar, we're going to have a brief survey pop up. It's just a few questions. If you could fill that out, that'd be greatly appreciated. Lets us know how we're doing so we can continue to provide you with the best webinar content. And then I always get asked if we'll be sending out the info. We will. Jeff's put together a really nice handout that we're going to put in a follow-up email, as well as a link to the recording. So if you didn't get to finish it, or if there's someone from your office you want to share it with, you'll be able to do that. So that email will come your way before the end of the day tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. And then also we have an exciting offer today. So at the end of the presentation, after the CE is concluded, I'm going to talk a little bit about Rectangle Health and how we help practices simplify their HIPAA and OSHA compliance. So if you do want to take a demo with us, we're doing a limited time offer where you can get a $100 DoorDash gift card for lunch for your entire practice on us. So exciting promotion there if you learn a little bit more about our solution. And then if you have any questions at all today throughout the chat, feel free to place them in there. We'll answer them in a timely manner and when we get around to them. So with that, I am very excited to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Jeff Lanza. Jeff is a former FBI special agent who served for 20 years, specializing in cybercrime, fraud, and identity theft investigations. After retiring, he became a keynote speaker, author, and security consultant, sharing his expertise in cybersecurity and fraud prevention. He has become a great friend of ours at Rectangle Health, and we're happy that he can be here today. So with that, Jeff, sending it in to you.
All right. Thank you, Jacob, for that nice introduction. Welcome, everybody, to the event. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be back for, I believe, a third time. It may even be a fourth time now that I think about it, but it's my pleasure, and welcome to the event again. I spent 20 years with the FBI. For most of my career, I was involved in white-collar crime. That doesn't sound just right. I investigated white-collar crime, but one part of white-collar crime is cybercrime. And if any of the crimes that in the white-collar crime area that are likely to affect you, it's going to be cybercrime and other types of fraud. And we'll be getting into some of those issues today as well. I like to focus on how we stay safe. And being in your practices now, you are in a very unique position with, I will say, lots of vulnerability because of the type of information that you have and that you work with, data that you may have at rest on servers, data that you may use in transit that go through communication systems. And it's all related to the big 3 Ps, and that would be payment, PCI, excuse me, that would be payment card industry, PCI, personally identifiable information like sensitive information such as social security numbers and other information about an individual. And then what you know, of course, is PHI, that's health specific information. Many of you have all 3 under your control. You probably at least have 2. But you may have all 3. So you're in a position where you really have to take steps to protect the information. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I've changed this presentation this year. I've updated it to include some, I don't know, to take things from a different angle, include some new threats as well, and some of the updated news stories that are out there regarding, the types of things that have happened to organizations like yours. So I'm going to talk about how we stay safe from these threats, what the strategies might be in each of these areas as we go through the presentation. Now, before I get into that, sometimes the national media, and I do want to talk about cybercrime in general first to give you kind of a flavor for that. And sometimes the national media will ask me to do television interviews. This is a screenshot of an interview that I did on CNBC, and they asked me on the show, how the hackers commit the crimes, and we're going to get into that today and how to stay safe. But one of the key things they asked me on the show that was I thought a very pertinent question. How can the FBI dismantle some of these cyber criminal organizations that are out there? Because they are organizations. Well, it's a little more difficult because the cyber crime organization, we'll just call them Crime Inc., right? There, in many cases, there's no clear leaders to the organizations, although they are organized like a Fortune 500 company, but there's no clear leaders that you can just take out like you can with the human trafficking organization or drug trafficking or the mafia, or a terrorist organization. You take out the leader, and in many cases, the organization kind of is least disrupted and maybe even falls apart. But what we have here are basically, we have people that are modular in nature. The modular aspect of it makes it difficult. If we take out one of these people, like a coder, for instance, they'll just replace them with another coder. No leadership skills required. They just have to do a task. And according to one of the coders' wanted posters, which I'm going to show you in a second, sometimes the people that are involved in these tasks come from very surprising places and backgrounds. No, Gus from Breaking Bad is not a coder. The actor Gus that played Gus is not a coder. But I want to start off by using him as an example. And this show's been on long enough, right? We can. It's not a spoiler here. Breaking Bad set new ground, broke ground in terms of how series should be presented. But in any case, Gus, as you're first introduced to him in the show, he seems like he looks in this picture, kind of a cool guy, nice guy you gotta let to know. He owned a chicken restaurant in the story. It turns out he's one of the biggest drug dealers in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and a violent killer. Oh, that's drama, right? It's fiction, but drama gets its compelling nature from surprising us with character developments and so forth. But in real life, let's take a look at a person that's involved in the production of malware that may be used to commit ransomware attacks. And to start that little story, I'm going to show you a State Department map of the world, obviously, color-coded for safety. Countries in blue you should travel to with no particular extra precautions, the same as you would in the United States, basically in terms of security precautions. As you get into the yellow, orange, and then the red, it gets much more serious than that. In fact, the countries in red on this world map you should not go to. Russia would be one of those countries, for example. The only one in that category that's red in the Western Hemisphere is Venezuela. The State Department basically says, hey, don't go to Venezuela because you may not get out alive. In fact, they're so corrupt there. If you report a crime to the police, they're likely to be part of the crime as well. You're probably not going to get out of there safely. So don't go to Venezuela. So the reason why I bring this up, if you were in Venezuela and you had a little AFib or something, a heart issue, would you go to see this cardiologist in Venezuela? He's a very renowned cardiologist there. And he looks like a nice guy. I think I'd feel comfortable being evaluated by this guy, right? Did you know that he's also wanted by the FBI? Here's the alter personality, like Gus in Breaking Bad. He's wanted by the FBI for writing malware that is used to commit ransomware attacks. So in his night job, he's doing things that are, defrauding Americans and facilitating groups to steal large amounts of money from people in extortion, basically in extortion schemes that involve ransomware. And you might think, well, at least he's not a violent criminal. Oh, yeah? Well, what about if his information that is used to attack a hospital, right? And they're increasingly being used to attack hospitals because they know they're more likely to pay because of the critical nature of their computers. And not just hospitals, medical facilities as well that have large amounts of patient information, which can then be used to extort payments out of the victim medical establishment as well. But when it's a hospital or medical establishment or involves potentially, which we'll cover later, remote medical devices, now we're talking about patient safety is at risk as well. Now, that malware that he wrote could have been used to attack Change Healthcare, a subsidiary of United Healthcare. Now, you are probably aware of this particular attack because you may have gotten a letter like I did, and I'll show you that letter a little bit later. As this Change Healthcare basically is an information distributor. Every time a medical transaction occurs in the United States, they're one of the major providers that take that information and use it for categorizing, keeping track of that information, and whatever else needs to be done to medical information. And their system was broken into. We are all victims if we use a provider or visit a provider that uses Change Healthcare, again, a subsidiary of United Healthcare, if we use their services. Big, huge honking security breach. Now, sometimes in national media, when I'm on TV like this, oh, by the way, that attack was undertaken by what's called the Alpha V gang. And one thing would have prevented this from happening. We'll talk about multi-factor authentication in a little while. One thing would have prevented that gigantic, big honking attack, and that is multi-factor authentication. How easy it would have been to prevent that attack from occurring if that was enabled on the system that they broke into. Simple two-factor, or also known as multi-factor authentication. Again, we'll get into that in a little while. Sometimes when I'm on national TV, the media put me on live, and people say sometimes, Jeff, if you're on live TV, what happens if they ask you a question that you don't know the answer to? Sometimes that comes up. Yes. One time I was in a studio in Kansas City. It looked like this. It was live TV, and the reporter threw out a question I couldn't answer. She goes, Agent Lanza, how do you know meth lab when you see one? Well, that's the wrong agency. See, that's the DEA, not the FBI. But I got to come up with an answer because it is, after all, live television. So I had to come up with something. So here you go. How do you know a meth lab when you see one? All right, there you go. There's your yellow lab. There's your black lab. There's your chocolate lab. And there's your meth lab right there. So, I use that example for more than just humor, and I hope it was humorous to you. I use it also to show you sometimes we don't always get what we expect that we're going to get. And when it comes to cybercrime, there's a lot of sleights of hand out there. We're going to talk about those sleights of hand in just a second, especially with regard to social engineering. So we'll start with social engineering. We'll walk through each of these one at a time. And don't forget, we're going to do some polling questions here as well. And let's start off with social engineering. So I brought this up in the last couple of seminars, and I've updated it since then. The Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights maintains a list of breached organizations. In fact, you are required by law to report breaches of a certain nature to Health and Human Services, and they publish it on their website on a pretty timely basis. And this is a screenshot of their website as I took it just this past weekend. So you can see that, lots of breaches, and this goes on and on and on and on and on. You're just looking at the first page of this. You can slice and dice this any way you want. So I sliced it for healthcare providers that are in dental practices, basically. I just put that in as a search criteria, and because I know a lot of you in this audience are in that category, and you can dice it that way, and you could see companies that have been victimized or practices that have been victimized by some type of incident involving security and information. And then here I diced it by where the information was hacked and how was the hack occurred. And I diced it by email. So I just filtered it for email. And because the most likely way that you'll be victimized in a variety of different attacks is through email. And it'd be attachments in emails from unknown senders, suspicious senders, things that don't make sense, which I'll talk about. And then also emails, links in emails can also fall into that same category that could send you to places where bad things can happen. Example of how an email account may be hijacked by tricking a user using social engineering techniques. All right, there's a login attempt. This is a serious issue. You better handle this. We're going to validate our account. Well, if you click on validate the account, that's going to take you to a login page. Now, you already be logged into Office 365 at that point in time, but some people may be tricked into logging in on a fake login page like this, and that will allow them to hijack your Office 365 account. If you look at the very top, I put the URL up there specifically because it shows you that that website is not even in the United States, and it's certainly not Microsoft's website, which is say Microsoft or Office 365 something or other. When you look at a website and you see two letters in there and followed by or preceded by a dot, that refers to a foreign country. Those two letters refer to a country where that website is being hosted. Every country has a two-letter internet code. That refers to Iran. I doubt Microsoft is hosting websites in our cyber enemy, Iran, today. That just doesn't make any sense at all. So you knew this would have been a trick if you just looked at the URL, which maybe you don't, or maybe people don't. Now, if you hover over where it says validate, hover to discover, that's how you get the exposure of that URL, because you may not see it on the page where they're trying to trick you. It'll generally appear the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So always hover to discover to see where links are going to send you before you go there. And you can uncover this trick, in this case, sending you to a phony website where they're trying to steal your credentials for the Microsoft 365 account. And if it happens, they would successfully hijack your email account. And there's that IR designation there that I mentioned. They may also just present a link for you there in the email itself. Same thing. You hover over that, and it's going to show you where you're going to be sent to. That's being spoofed to trick us. And by hovering, again, we're going to be exposed to that particular true link that you would go to if you were to click on that, or the true site. Speaking of Iran, so let's take a look at this website. This is the FBI's cybercrime website, where they explain the cybercrimes, but then in more detail, they show you a picture of all the people in the world that are top cybercrimes criminals that are wanted by the FBI, the 30 of the most wanted criminals for cybercrime in the world. And if you look at these closely, a lot of them are in uniform of the countries that they live in. So we've got state-sponsored cybercrime, as well as they go home at night after they're done working, and they use their skills to try to defeat us for personal information as well, to fund their operations. And to prove that to you, take a look at these two pictures. Of these two people, who do you think is more likely to end up on an FBI wanted list in their lifetime? Well, if you guess this person, I have not been on an FBI wanted list. It almost looked like I could be aspiring to be in the mafia. By the way, this guy currently is on an FBI wanted list, and his name is Human Hadarian. He is in Iran. Iran's not going to send him here to face charges, so there's no consequences to him, and there's no deterrence, and so the crimes continue. Now, like normal justice systems may work with consequences and deterrence, but if you look what he's wanted for, you'll see more specific information about what he does. He does nuisance stuff like defacing websites. Then it's more serious than that: exfiltration of sensitive information, breaking into computer networks. And then at the very bottom, then he's doing other stuff to fund their activities, getting stolen credit card information, stealing identities of people in the United States, and using that for fraud. All part of their general scheme, not only to take our money, but to take our information, which can be converted to money. And again, no consequences for them. And they're all kind of like that. All those 30 people are just kind of like that. And I use this one specifically because it was Iran, and that website that you saw was in Iran for the fake Microsoft login page. And there it is. You can see information about his illicit activities against us personally as well. So some people may use, you shouldn't be doing this for your business, but if you use personal email for activities, they can also be hijacked as well. You got gmail at qmail.com, really? So they're not even spoofing that to trick us. They're not even putting up a fake name to make it look like it's coming from a Gmail domain, right? They're not hoping we don't notice that. If we clicked on continue with verification, it's going to take us to a fake login page for Gmail. Again, trying to hijack a Gmail user's account, and that would allow them to get lots of information about people, as they could dig around in there and gain a lot of intelligence to help learn more about a person, what credit cards they use, what banks they use, and design phishing emails around those institutions as well to try to trick people. From the FBI crime report from 2023, this is the latest one we have access to right now. This comes out in March of every year. You'll see in that row that's highlighted, that BEC stands for Business Email Compromise. And that's why they get access to an email accounts of a business, and they can use that to trick people into sending money. They could trick people into downloading malware to a system, which could lead to ransomware attacks. All sorts of bad things happen when a business email is compromised. And that total figure there, which is going up every year for the past 3 years, is the amount of profit, excuse me, that's generated by criminals as a result of business email compromise. And that's just what's been reported to the FBI. We know a large part of these crimes are not reported to the FBI to begin with. Another way they could steal my credentials, I'm just going to show you this because I thought it was kind of funny the way this came up. All right, so this is a PayPal email. Looks like it's coming from PayPal, and they sent it to my email account. So I brought it up on my mobile device where you can't hover, right? There's no mouse to hover on a mobile device. Now, PayPal, you may notice, the observant eye would notice this PayPal is spelled incorrectly in a couple of places. But anyway, you can't hover, but you can press and hold. That's the equivalent of hovering on a mobile device, pressing and holding, and that's going to reveal the site you're going to be sent to. So that's not PayPal's site, obviously. That's something else. It's kind of a weird, kind of wanky looking site there. And .ac, and that stands for Ascension Island, which is a small island in the middle of the Atlantic. Cybercrime can range from Iran, like nations like Iran or Russia that goes after us, and others, North Korea, or it could be somebody on a small island. It's 1,000 miles from a major continent where only 700 people live, going after some small amount of money from a PayPal account. But it all involves social engineering, tricking us into going places, generally because they think something is wrong, or there's other things under the category. You've missed a package, you've won a gift card, you've won a drill set, stuff like that. All right, ransomware is my number 2 topic. And let's talk more specifically about that. Ransomware has been a big a problem for medical institutions. And in fact, medical facilities are targets of ransomware because of patient health issues, because the information is so critical and sensitive. Some hospitals, this one in particular, has set up a code dark, a separate code. You know what codes are in hospitals. You have code red, code blue. This is a code dark. When there's a ransomware attack occurs, you're supposed to basically disconnect your workstations if there's a code dark situation, await instructions, report to your managers, and follow the department's guidelines. And they're advising you of that to prevent the spread of the ransomware, to try to mitigate the cost of it and try to minimize the spread of the ransomware throughout hospitals, organizations, or medical facilities organizations. So they've come up with codes for ransomware. That's how prolific it's been in the past few years. And I want you to remember this point as we go forward here. Most ransomware attacks begin in emails, right? Asking you to click on the attachment. The attachment is the issue. If you get an attachment in an email, always double check to make sure the source is one that you trust. And if it's coming from an outside source, especially make sure of that before you click on an attachment. Most of the problems occur in an email attachment. I'd say over 90% of those. Take a look at this email. This would elicit an emotional reaction. If you got an email personally or in a business that looked like it was coming from the IRS, you might have an emotional reaction. Opening the email doesn't harm your computer, but we'll tell you immediately that this doesn't make sense already, because if this were the case, the IRS would send you a letter, all right? But emotionally, some people may click on the attachment, and that could put malware on your computer. Now, the word malware comes from 2 terms. The operative word there is malicious. If that gets on a computer, some bad things can happen, right? So that's what you don't want to have happen. So again, these outside emails coming from sources that you may not trust, be really careful about attachments. When in doubt, throw out that email. Don't download the attachment, and that will keep you safe from getting malware in these type of emails designed to elicit the emotional reaction. You can also hover, by the way, with your mouse over the sender, and by hovering over the sender, you're going to get a reveal of who the true sender is. So you can do that as well, like you can with a web address that you would be sent to. Here we're hovering over the sender. We see that it's spoofed to trick us. The spoofing of the IRS is designed to make us think it's really coming from the IRS, but it's not. It's coming from someone with a Gmail account. So it's another indication that this is fraudulent. This is a great thing to have. Talk to your IT departments, whether you have inside IT or you have you're outsourcing it. When emails come from outside sources, they can generate a note inside the email which tells you, be careful. This is from an outside source. We don't know that this source is safe necessarily. Be real careful about clicking on links, opening attachments, as I mentioned, and then also even responding to the emails and validating your email address, telling them that that's a valid email address and could be used again and sold to other people to try to trick you. Still talking about ransomware. MGM, the big hotel casino chain, was subject to a ransomware attack. They decided not to pay the ransom, which was a $30 million request. they decided they just weren't going to pay it, but it cost them over $100 million to recover. Now, they could have gotten the software keys that would have unlocked the system and a lot less recovery time, a lot less costs associated with that. But they decided that on principle, they weren't going to pay it. Still cost them a lot of money to recover, way more than the ransom request. A lot of that was covered by insurance, by the way. At the same time, Caesars was also attacked, and they did pay the ransom. How did this attack occur? Well, we know this. The criminals looked at the LinkedIn account of an employee that was basically in IT. Then they sent a phishing email to hijack his email account. And then they called the help desk at MGM, acting like they were the employee. And they used social engineering to manipulate the person at the help desk to give them administrative access. And once they had that, they could pretty much do anything they want, including launching this unbelievable in scope ransomware attack. If you were at an MGM casino during that time, last September, this is September 2023, everything was shut down. I mean, you were checking in at the hotel, they had to do it by hand. You're checking out, they're saying, well, how many mini bottles of booze did you drink? You know, it was that kind of thing. You couldn't bet at the sports kiosks any at this time, and they use a crying emoji to represent that. I think they should have had the crying emoji with the two tears coming down, those big heavy tears, because that was a lot of time that they were down and couldn't take bets. Ask me how I know that. Anyway, Caesars also was attacked. They decided to pay the ransom. They got up and running a lot quicker, and they bargained it down though to $15 million. Just so you know, and you know, they paid $15 million. You know, who ends up paying the cost of this? We all do. Consumers do, right? In any type of breach like this, it gets passed on to consumers, the cost of fraud. So previously, if you were in a Caesars casino and you won a jackpot, that would be a royal flush on poker with the maximum bet, you won $200,000. Now, after the ransomware attack, they had to get some of that cost back, so they couldn't pay as much. They actually lowered it to $2. Yeah. I hope you're chuckling, because it's going to be a long time to manipulate the numbers to make them look exactly the way I wanted it to. So how does a ransomware attack occur? It starts with, again, attachments in emails, or it could be something involving enabling content in a Word document that you're wanting to see. It could be something like this. Here's kind of a tricky one. You get an email and it says, you can open this document involving a payment. Of course, that elicits an emotional reaction, but it's a sensitive document, so we're encrypting it with a password. Why would they put the password in the email that's used to send the document? That doesn't make any sense, right? You'd send the password some other way, some other band of communication, right? But no, they're sending it in there, but they're trying to elude antivirus software, which scans attachments for malware, and they can't open it. The antivirus software can't open it to scan it, so it gets through to the end user. And if they clicked on that and put in the password, that would download the malware to the system and start the ransomware attack. The encryption occurs, and to a person who's trying to open up files on a computer, you'll see something like this. Everything's encrypted, and you can get help, that is information about how to pay ransom, in the help files. Then you get to the help files and they say, hey, what happened? You don't have time to deal with asymmetric algorithms and all the definitions of those. You just want to get up and running again. And for a medical establishment, it's pretty serious stuff. And they exfiltrate the data too. They're not just holding it ransom. They're taking the information in many cases, and using that as extortion bait. And isn't it nice they give you a volume discount? You can pay 3 Bitcoins for each affected system, or you can pay 13 Bitcoins for everything. Ransoms have gone up in recent years, by the way, because they know how crucial it is to get back up and running, and especially for medical facilities where that information is very sensitive. It's nice they give you a volume discount. You'll likely get your encryption key if you pay. There's no guarantees, but they want to keep doing business, so they generally give it to you. And then afterwards, you're going to get an email that asks for your hacking experience. It's almost gotten to this point. Seriously, I mean, it's a business, and they want to keep their customers happy, even though they're not happy when they get victimized by the attack. So ransomware prevention. I talked about this before. Training, awareness training is so important. Top of mind awareness. Always talk about it at meetings you have, not just what's going on in the business, what you need to talk about in terms of your running of your business, but a top priority should always be cybercrime. Have at least 1 or 2 things that you talk about. during those meetings to keep that as top of mind awareness. Using multi-factor authentication will protect the hijacking of email accounts, and keeping your software up to date. It may not be your responsibility, but whoever's it is in an organization, it's important that stuff is patched and kept up to date because the vulnerabilities may lie in that out-of-date software. An air gap backup is one that's physically removed from the system. It's not connected, and software companies sell this service so you can get back up and running quickly without having to pay a ransom. It's called an air gap backup. It's similar to taking all of your photos off of your computer or keeping them on there, but putting them on a hard drive, disconnecting the hard drive, throwing in the computer, throwing in a drawer, and that is considered an air gap backup. You can't get to that on the internet. It's not physically connected. Recovery plans are important. If you do have a backup, which you should, test the backup to make sure it's doing what you want and has the information that you want. As you saw in the code dark badge that someone was wearing, shut down systems to limit the attack. And just one more thing about this, having a recovery plan, it's so important. It should be a step-by-step approach. This is what we do if something happens. Here's who's in charge. Here's who's secondly in charge if the first person isn't there. And here's what has to happen when specifically in this order if there is an attack involving ransomware. You can limit the damage by having that type of protocol in place. The ransomware attack that took place against Colonial Pipeline back in 2021 was broad in scope. They ended up paying about a $4 million ransom, which is low by today's standards. But I want to show you something. This is the CEO called before Congress just a few days after that attack to explain what happened, because it tied up gasoline distribution pipelines on the East Coast for a number of days. He said this.
In the case of this particular legacy VPN, it did only have single factor authentication. It was a complicated password, so I want to be clear on that. It was not a Colonial 123 type password.
I assume that you heard that. If you didn't, he said basically that it was a single factor authentication, no dual factor into the legacy system. So two problems there. They weren't using multi-factor authentication. First problem right off the bat, easy way to prevent access. And the second thing is it was a legacy system that the criminals found and attacked. The legacy system is one that you may still be using from a software standpoint, but it's not supported by the company anymore. Microsoft Windows 8, for example, would be an example of a legacy system. They stopped supporting that in January 2023. When they're not supporting it, you're not getting updates, and any vulnerabilities are not being fixed anymore, and the criminals know about the vulnerabilities. They can go after those legacy systems. If you have a legacy system, it should be discontinued as soon as possible and protected with multi-factor authentication in the meantime, as well as your other systems. If you try to buy a car in about June of this year, I don't think it was that long ago. I think it was more like August. Auto dealers were shut down because the software company they relied upon to do all their transactions involving people purchasing cars had a ransomware attack. We've heard on the street that $25 million was paid in order to unlock their system so car dealers can sell cars again. It's a long process buying a car. It was certainly a long process when they had no software to work with in the car dealerships around the country that worked with this victimized company. Before we go on, a little reflection. I became interested in becoming an FBI agent in 1978 when I was a kid working in my dad's store. My dad owned this place. It was a nondescript store and a nondescript shopping center. One day I'm unpacking the newspapers that had been sent over by the truck from New York City, and I saw this headline about a heist in New York City by the mob. They didn't rob a business. They didn't rob a bank. They robbed an airport. And $5 million in today's dollars is about 25 million to put things in perspective. But I read this headline and what was below it, and I saw the FBI was investigating this case, and I said, I want to be in the FBI because I want to investigate cases like that. That's what I want to do. I want to investigate the mob. So that is the reason why I joined the FBI. And 10 years later, really almost to the month, I graduated from the FBI Training Academy in Quantico, Virginia. So picture me getting my FBI credentials, all based on that newspaper article that I saw that day, just by coincidence, right? By chance. That's me joining the FBI. And you might be wondering, wait a second, is that Jim Croce joining the FBI? Listen, if I could save time in a bottle, first thing I would do is go back and shave off that mustache. Not really, because mustaches were big back then. I mean, literally, they were literally big back in the 1980s. And the mob was also big. So I joined the FBI to investigate the mob. And along the way, my family had a very interesting tradition. on Christmas, we used to sit around the TV. I come from a town in Connecticut outside of New York City, and it was 5 boys in my family, and we had a tradition in my Italian family. Every Christmas, we'd sit around a TV that looked like this, and we'd watch a movie. The movie taught me about life and loyalty and how business should be conducted. And everybody thinks that the movie we watched was It's a Wonderful Life. No, that wasn't it. It was not A Wonderful Life. We did not watch this. Our holiday entertainment was not filled with names like George Bailey and Mary Bailey and so forth. No, it was not it. Our holiday entertainment was filled with names like Vito Corleone and Luca Brasi and Johnny Fontane and so forth. Those are the names we heard. We watched The Godfather every Christmas. And I know that's a weird tradition, but that's my family, not me. So when I got to Kansas City as an FBI agent in 1988, I asked to work a mob case and I said, you got any mob cases going on? They go, yeah, we got a mob case. We got a mobster's phone. His name is Tony. You can go sit on the wire if you want. So I go in this room, I sit on the wiretap of Tony, and Tony gets a call from Joe as we listen to the call. Now there's a lesson here, so watch what happens next as Tony gets a call from Joe. Tony says, Joe, I'm really glad you called. And Joe goes, yeah, why? And Tony goes, I got a little problem. I think the FBI is tapping my phone. And Joe goes, well, what are you going to do about it? And Tony goes, well, I got a new number. So here we go, lacking any common sense. Joe goes, okay, good. Give me the number. Now, Tony gets a little common sense. He says, I better not give it to you on the phone. I'll meet you for lunch and give it to you then. And Joe says, well, I can't meet you for lunch. And Tony says, okay, I'll give it to you now on the phone, but I'll give it to you backwards. So we gave him the 7 digits in reverse order. What did the FBI do? We got our best cryptologist on that one right away. We had the number figured out in record time. It just took us 6 months with the powerful computers we had in 1988. But I use this example. It's a true story, not the 6-month part of the story, but the phone call is true because it illustrates a key point. How critical is common sense in everyday life? When it comes to preventing fraud, it's important too, because what criminals try to do is manipulate our thinking so we're not using common sense. They want us to use emotions to make decisions or to make mistakes of people who just don't use common sense to begin with, which brings me to my next point, the endpoint attacks. All right, here's a real life example. 43,000 patients had their information breached after a theft of an unencrypted laptop was left in a car and stolen from a car. Let me show you how fast this can occur. And believe me, criminals are still targeting valuable items like laptops. And this is just surveillance video of a guy who saw a laptop on the front seat of a car. He checked to see if the door was unlocked. He wasn't going to break it if he didn't have to. I'll give him credit for that. But anyway, he gets the laptop, and it's as simple as that. So here's a couple of things involving common sense. Don't leave a laptop in the front of a car, especially one that contains medical information. Don't leave it anywhere in plain sight in a car, whether it's on the front seat or any seat of a car. Make sure that's out of sight. And if stuff is going to be on a laptop, and it is going to be a public place, cars or otherwise, make sure that the information on that laptop is encrypted. And this story that you're seeing now on the screen involves someone who just walked away from their laptop in a coffee shop, and it was taken immediately by someone, not knowing his medical information on it, but it happened to be. That becomes a reporting incident when that happens. So it doesn't have to be reported if the information is encrypted. But here's the rub on that. The information is not encrypted if you have left the laptop open and unlocked, basically. So if they call you to get your triple spiced pumpkin latte and you want to get up for a second to go get it, lock the laptop. That encrypts everything on the laptop if you have it set that way. And then someone can't unlock it without the code. It's not a reportable incident. So again, all these things are common sense. Stuff can be stolen in just an instant. It can happen so quickly. And in terms of Wi-Fi, does it make sense to use the Wi-Fi of an unknown network, like at an airport, a restaurant, a bar, a remote island? That remote island you see on the screen is about 1,000 miles from Ascension Island, which we talked about earlier. They have a hotel there that offers free Wi-Fi. You wouldn't use that at all without a VPN, because there's so many risks to public Wi-Fi, especially if it involves a medical facility's computer. So take steps to protect it. Use a virtual private network, use the cellular network of a device to connect to the internet without using public Wi-Fi, because it just is not secure. Another way criminals can get access to computers and get information. Also, remove administrative accounts, and only people who need administrative accounts should have them, because that gives more access to individuals if they have those. And if someone hacked into an account and stole the credentials of someone who had that access, it gives them more ability to go more places. I talked about updating already, and then endpoint protections. Again, antivirus software, all common sense, right? Disk encryption is so important, because it becomes not a reportable event if a device does get stolen, an endpoint device. And then, of course, auto updates to make the updating process easier. Let's talk next about data loss. Just checking my time here to make sure we're not going to go overtime or under time. Knox College is a small liberal arts college in Illinois. They had a breach where they held their computers hostage in a ransomware attack. The criminals demanded an extortion payment. The college refused. The college then said, okay, we're going to send an email to all the students affected and say, you should pay money yourself, because the school's not paying the money to have your information not published in public forums or public settings or placed on the dark web. And this is the exact email that went out to the students. How did they have the students' email addresses? How did they get those? Well, they were in the breach. So they had all the email addresses of 4,500 students at this college. I haven't changed anything in this email except I've taken out the expletive here. But the school settled in a class action lawsuit, giving $2,500 each to the students, because it's an expensive proposition to get your identity back if it's been stolen. Not that you're getting it back necessarily, I mean, you still have an identity, but it's that you have to fix all the problems that the criminal did with your identity, credit card accounts, they got loans in your name, and so forth. So anyway, class action lawsuit. Information is very valuable to criminals, which is why it's a target and why we have to protect it. Now let's go to a real life example in the medical area. United Healthcare, subsidiary of Change Healthcare, subsidiary of United Healthcare. That was where the hack occurred. So let's look at some of the facts here. The date of the attack was February. The attack occurred it was caused by, or the criminal behind the attack was a particular gang. We talked about that earlier. Stolen credentials, no MFA was enabled in this case, as I've already mentioned. Legacy technology, again, unsupported technology by a software company or hardware company. That's a lot of data, One of the biggest breaches in history. And the cost is going to be more than $1 billion to United Healthcare for everything, including, and who knows what the lawsuit's going to end up being. Those are ongoing right now. Prevention would have been multi-factor authentication, a simple multi-factor authentication protecting an access system, an access point would have prevented that breach from happening. And it wasn't just them. Okay, so there's collateral damage. Medical practices, a lot of them had to close because they rely upon Change Healthcare to process the transactions and claim and get the payments, the billing out, so they receive payments so they can run their operations. And for a while, they couldn't do it. And so they closed up temporarily, or even used their own personal funds to support the business while this was going on. This is the letter I got from Change Healthcare, arrived in my physical mailbox just a couple of weeks ago. And you could see that, it's a serious situation because they have to notify everyone that's been affected. A lot of people, maybe some of this audience, are getting the same type of letters. So what do they do with that information? If it involves social security numbers and dates of birth, besides the other stuff that's very sensitive as well, they'll sell it on the dark web. This is a success story of a series of dark web pages that were taken down by the government. Lots of people had their information for sale on these dark web pages. I mean, that's what they're going to do with that information. If they're going to sell it, they'll wholesale it so others could buy it, and it generates a lot of profit for the wholesalers. All right, and so what do they do with the information? Or the people who buy it, what do they do with it? Well, they'll open up credit card accounts in your name. They'll get loans in your name. You may need a fake ID for that. Doesn't have to be a driver's license. If you were going to get a driver's license to fake an account, to fake your identity, you might want to have the common sense to take your girlfriend's picture. I don't know if the driver's license photograph, maybe this is what they refer to as real ID. They're real photographs taken in photo booths. They'll open up accounts like this. They can do other things too, get prescription drugs, file tax returns fraudulently, and do many, many other things too. But at least a couple of these things you can prevent from happening. And that would be by freezing your credit reports. If you freeze your credit reports, they can't open up credit card accounts in your name. They can't get loans in your name. So it's more of a personal thing I recommend doing to keep your accounts safe, because they can't open up those accounts if you've frozen your credit reports. There is a handout that's going to be provided to you. This will come to you from Rectangle. It has all the information that we've talked, some of the information we've talked about today, specifically with regard to personal accounts. You should freeze those, and it's really easy to do because I provided the websites on the handout for you to go to those websites directly to freeze your credit reports. It's the easiest way to freeze your credit reports without a lot of hassle. You don't have to talk to somebody. You don't have to make a phone call. They're not going to answer the phone anyway. You don't have to write anybody. They're not going to respond to that effectively anyway. So go ahead and freeze them at the websites that I've described, including the fourth one called Innovis, which a lot of people forget about. I've done it myself. It's easy to do. It doesn't affect your credit card relationships. It doesn't affect your credit scores. It keeps you safe from fraud. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about, this is one I haven't brought up in my past 2 or 3 webinars, and that is attacks against medical devices. I became interested in this particular aspect of it by doing some research into some things that have happened. You may have heard that in a 60 Minutes episode a few years back when Dick Cheney was still vice president, he said that the Secret Service had him take his pacemaker offline because hackers had the ability potentially to break into a medical device like Cheney's and may stop it from working. So there's not just medical devices or cause them to go into cardiac arrest, basically, not just stop it from working. That wouldn't necessarily cause any problem. Could. Anyway, there's other types of wearable medical devices that are connected to the internet that you see here on the screen. So let's look at some of the history of this. I thought you might be interested in knowing that the first time this was actually exposed was when a diabetic person in 2011 demonstrated at the hacker conference. Yeah, there are hacker conferences, by the way, that he could actually kill himself by remotely accessing insulin pump. 2015, Johnson & Johnson disclosed there was a security vulnerability there. In 2019, the FDA recalled certain devices because of this vulnerability. And in 2000, well, I guess I have those out of order there. 2017 should have come first. But in any case, another issue there with some particular devices. And then I like this one. If you watch Homeland, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, 2012, I know this is fiction, but a Homeland episode involving the vice president's pacemaker being attacked by a terrorist to kill him. That was the theme of the show and the plot of that particular show, but theoretically possible, right? All right, so I'm going to close out with a couple things here. We still have the polling questions, so don't leave. But common vulnerabilities in medical devices can include, again, legacy systems that are not supported by their makers anymore, and also including older equipment, which may not be supported, but they're generally referred to as legacy systems. So make sure your medical equipment, if you are involved in these types of devices, providing those for patients, that is up to date, the software is validated, patches are installed, and it's all updated and tested on a regular basis. This is my handout. The handout has a lot of the information we're talking about today. It does have some personal information that you can use on a personal basis to stay safe as well. I'm stopping there, and Jacob's going to come back in and help with the polling questions, and then we have some more stuff for you, so don't go away.
Yes, very important. We're doing polling questions. This is required as part of our CE, so stay on board. We got to make sure you were paying attention. So I'm going to get us started here with polling question number 1. All right. Hackers often target medical records because they are easier to hack than other records. They want to learn about health trends. There are very few laws that govern how the records are managed, and their sensitivity can facilitate large extortion payments. So I can give everyone a few seconds to get their answers in there. Jeff, you may find this surprising, but people are not selecting that the hackers want to learn about health trends. Very surprising. Thought they wanted to get up to date with their knowledge there.
I really thought that was it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're doing pretty good here. Looks like 92% said their sensitivity can facilitate large extortion payments.
What a audience has really paid attention. All right. Very good.
Love that. All right. Let's do polling question number 2. All right. What happens when medical records are breached? They may be fined by regulatory agencies. They may be the target of patient lawsuits. They may lose business due to reputational damage or all of the above. Give everyone about 10 seconds to get in their answers. All right. We have a lot of people in here, and this may be the first time I've actually seen 100% on one of these. So good job to everyone there. All of the above is the correct answer.
D as in dog.
All right. And let's do polling question number 3. Which of the following are true regarding ransomware attacks? They are used to extort money from victims. If you pay ransom, there is no guarantee that you will get access to your files. Most ransomware attacks are the result of someone clicking on an attachment in an email or all of the above. You know, sometimes people do these questions, Jeff, to trap people into thinking, well, maybe it's not all the above, or the last one was all the above. But can you tell us what the answer to this one was?
It is all the above. It's
It
D
is all the
again.
above.
D for dog. I know. I tried to make it a little trickier this time.
It's a little bit of a mind game.
Yeah.
But great work, everyone. Great participation there. Before everyone hops off to, I do have 2 questions in the chat that we're going to go through, and then everyone stay on because I'm going to as well go through how you're getting your CE follow-up materials and a few other things from our end. So I have 2 good questions here from the group, Jeff, that I'm going to ask you. So the first one is, and I thought this was a really good question, can I get malware on a cell phone? I've seen this question before.
Yeah, generally not. I don't think there's any examples of malware on an iPhone that I've heard of. Anyway, Androids are a little more susceptible because you can download stuff from places other than the Google Play Store, and Apple doesn't allow you to do that, only from the Apple Store. So the place where malware would come from would be much more protected on an Apple device than an Android device. There's antivirus software you can run not on an Apple device. They won't let you run anything antivirus software, but there's some you can run on a Google device.
All right, and the other one that I had here is there a way to tell if your system is compromised or being attacked? And would you have any recommendations as to what could be done to prevent these types of attacks?
It's not always evident. Sometimes you'll have it doing weird things. You'll get blue screens. You'll get slow screens. Not always evident. It's not consistent as to what the symptoms might be. If you have any inkling that you're being attacked, then you should get IT professionals involved right away. Shut down systems when necessary. But the telltale signs are not always evident.
Perfect. All right. Well, that is it for our CE. But before everyone pops off, just want to bring up a few quick things here. So just want to introduce you to Rectangle Health and who we are. So we offer what we call bridge compliance. It's a service that we have with over 4,000 medical and dental practices all across the country. And with bridge compliance, you know, a lot of what Jeff went through today, making sure your practice is properly trained, how to identify different measures for cybersecurity, how HIPAA compliance plays a role in all of that. We do all of that. So I did get a question that popped up, you know, what can we do to protect ourselves, right? This is something that's very simple, very turnkey that you can do that helps protect your practice from both a HIPAA compliance standpoint and from a cybersecurity standpoint. So Jeff, you can go to the next slide.
Yes, sir. Coming up.
Perfect. And this is just a sneak peek here into our portal. Like I said, a lot of people just kind of wing it when it comes to HIPAA compliance and cybersecurity. And in full transparency, it's too important and it's too serious to be doing that. So if you don't know where to start, I highly recommend you reach out to our team. I've placed a link to the demo in the chat. And if you fill out that form, our team will get back to you, set up a quick time to talk, go through what you're currently doing for HIPAA compliance and cybersecurity, and then talk to you about how we can get your practice on the right track. And if you complete that demo too, no obligation, but we are giving a $100 DoorDash gift card that we're calling Lunch on Us. So if nothing else, you'll get a nice lunch and you can make sure that you have peace of mind in your practice. So highly recommend filling out that demo form so you can learn more about bridge compliance. And then you can go to the next slide. And this is just showing our special offer there. Once again, I'm going to put that link to the demo in the chat so you have it. And we highly encourage you to book with us so we can talk to you about compliance in your office. So with that, that's it for me. I'm going to give my end housekeeping here, but I'm seeing it pop up in the chat. People always ask about the recording and the handout. We will be sending those out via email. You will be getting those by the end of the day tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. CE credits will also be coming your way. That will come within 2 weeks. It takes time for us to process those, so be patient. Those will come from Nora Dowling on our CE team. And then, as mentioned before, there will be a survey that pops up at the end of the presentation here when we end it. So please fill that out so we know how we did and so we can continue to provide you with the best webinars. So if you do have any other questions that may come up, don't hesitate to reach out to us, webinar@rectanglehealth.com. We'll be sure to get you an answer. And then I also placed our links to our upcoming webinars in the chat. We've got 2 great topics. One's all about the value chain and aligning care with profit goals. I know it can be a tricky one, so we put together a topic on that. And then we also have how to revolutionize the revenue cycle at your practice, which is another specialty of ours in the payments world. So feel free to sign up for those. And Jeff, I see great feedback coming in for you already. So thank you so much, as always. Great presentation. I think I'm going to go watch some Breaking Bad here tonight, inspired by one of your earlier slides. But thank you, as always. You were great. And everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
Take care.